Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. So in this, the first episode of The Big Fight in the new year, we are really going to try and set the agenda for 2016. Yeah, we know all that happened in 2014, 2015, but we're going to try and establish today what are the 4 or 5 things we would really like to see being done differently in India in 2016. We've assembled a great panel of thinkers to take us through what the agenda should be for 2016. And let me start off by welcoming everyone who's here with us. Let me start off by welcoming Sudhanshu Trivedi, spokesperson of the BJP, standing next to him, Professor Ashutosh Bashni, Director of the India Initiative at Brown University. We have Gaurav Gogoi with us, Lok Sabha MP from the Congress Party. Harsh Mandar, a writer, activist, old friend of ours here, as is Shekhar Gupta, senior journalist and columnist. Bimlendu Jha is the founder and the head of Swecha. Nasir Abdullah, well-known actor, is with us as well right here in the studio, so thanks for being with us. Vikram Singh Mehta, chairman of Brookings India, is with us as well, as is Sudhir Vora, who's a well-known urban planner. So everybody who could help us set the agenda is here with us. Okay, should I take a bash at putting out some 4 or 5 items on the possible agenda to kickstart the debate, and then all of you can add to it? So what is it that India should try and do in 2016? Well, here are some ideas. Kickstarting reforms, bringing them on, getting them rolling, one possibility. Ending this entire debate and discussion about intolerance and about vendetta and having a much quieter, calmer year, that could be number 2. Ending a parliament logjam, getting parliament to function time after time, session after session, that's a possible number 3. Figuring out foreign policy and maybe getting the Indo-Pak peace process on track could be one more item. Cleaning up the urban mess, that's the 5th item that I will actually table as a possible item on the agenda. And that, of course, would be a big relief to everybody. Agreement, disagreement with any of that, and then I'm going to ask you all to add your own agenda items.
Out of these 5, whatever you are saying, from social to political to environmental, every aspect you have covered. So we will go along with that.
Professor Bashni, that list and then add other items to it.
You said if the urban mess is cleaned up, all of us would benefit. Well, it's only partly true. 2/3 of India is still in the countryside, and there is some sort of agrarian crisis in several parts of India, and we need to think seriously about solutions to agrarian crisis as well.
So add sorting out the agrarian crisis to that list. Okay, fine. There's one more item.
Well, I would agree with Professor Varshni. Agrarian crisis is something that the Congress party has been raising in the parliament for the last 2 years, especially with 2 successive droughts, low MSPs, and the crop failure that we are seeing due to hailstorms and seasonal weather. It's a very, very important issue. And I think it will be an interesting year also because there are 4 state elections which are going to polls. And this is Assam, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And that pretty much spans from north to southeast. So it's how these elections will pan out.
So what's the nation's agenda there? I guess your agenda is to try and win them, as would his be.
Absolutely.
But is there a national agenda?
Well, again,
there?
you like to see what are the issues which go forward. Is it the same issues that have been seen in UP and Bihar? Is it polarization, or do we actually go back to development?
Yeah, Harsh, your agenda.
Yeah, I think in addition to some of the things that you said, I would say I see a pullback on the welfare state to whatever extent it existed, social sector spending, Narega and so on. I worry about that, and I'd like to see a restoration of of the commitment of the state for public spending for the poor, and particularly, most of all, if we can get finally to the agenda of primary health care for all. In foreign policy, I'd really like to see something about Nepal. And lastly, remembering that 11 states are under drought, I think that looking at the long-term agrarian crisis, but also the immediate relief.
Okay, Shekhar.
I think there should be less negativity in our politics. Our politics has reached a state by the end of this last year, 2015, where everybody treats everybody else as enemy. In fact, I say it sort of half facetiously, but that we have 3 key leaders in India now, Prime Minister Modi, Rahul Gandhi, and Arvind Kejriwal, each one of whom refers to himself in 3rd person. ये केजरीवाल करेगा, ये मोदी नहीं करेगा, झुग्गी जलाने हैं तो राहुल गांधी से पूछो. So 3 people driven by these mega egos. When you have egos like that, it's very difficult to think that the other guy also has a point. I'll be hoping that some of that is rolled back, and politicians
So roll back negativity. It's a broader point to intolerance.
Politicians relearn the art of compromise, but on other things, for example, cleaning up the urban mess. Cleaning up the urban mess is a very long-term project. You can't do it by banning this here, stopping this there. That is just band-aid solutions. What you need is a new look at urban governance. I think in the previous government, a beginning was made with JNNURM. You need some larger ideas to improve city governance, because people from villages will keep moving to cities. You can't quarantine your cities.
Yeah. Want to add something to the list?
Yeah, so air quality management or urban mess management is not the responsibility of the Supreme Court. And what we've actually seen in the last decade is that governance is driven by the courts rather than by the governments. And I want that to change in 2016. At the end of the day, it's not what the courts tell you, but what the governments ought to be doing. And I think
so both governance should be driven by the governments and not entirely dependent.
If I may add to that, I entirely agree with him. I think, it's a metaphor I use carefully, but in 2016, I'd like to see the courts back in the barracks, so to say.
Yeah, because it's actually not. It's not.
And doing some interpreting of the law. But the courts will say that we have to get out of the barracks because governments are not governing, so somebody has to
sure.
Get out of the barracks.
Governments have to govern.
Exactly. So we're looking at strengthening some of these institutions.
Parliament has to learn to function.
Okay, governments govern, so therefore you're not that worried about what happens there. All right, that's it.
Of late, I happen to think about this, that the government has, none of the governments, be it the Congress, the BJP or anybody else, has actually done anything at all to educate our youth as they grow up on how to behave with the ladies around you. Nothing has been done. They learn biology, geometry, geography, everything else, but this very basic thing where we are lacking, and we have this attitude to women which leads to all the stuff, and it keeps on happening.
Some of the stuff should be added to the school curriculum, treating women. Also other things, civic sense in general.
Absolutely, but the first thing, women are entitled to men as much, to freedom of movement, and it is not happening. They live in fear because the boys grow up to be, uneducated about how to deal with your women.
Okay.
Fair enough point. That's a long-term project.
Yeah, I didn't say make it short-term. Obviously, it's been 50 years.
I'm not sure. So actually, that's an interesting point that you're making, Professor Varshney, to be able to try and find things that we can actually do in 2016. Reforming society and mindsets may take more than
begin things that can take longer as well.
Yeah, begin things.
Begin things.
Vikram Singh Mehta, let me get you in.
I would add 3 points. One is that we have to square the circle between the imperative of reducing carbon and our policy objective of increasing coal production from 500 million tons to 1.5 billion tons. The second thing that I would like to discuss is the whole aspect of, you might call it, algorithmic governance. How do we introduce technology in order to make the implementation phase of governance more effective? And the third is to do with institutions. When it comes to the content of democracy, the institutions of democracy, we fail very sharply. So we really have to ask ourselves the question, how do we strengthen the 3 main pillars of our democratic governance, the institutions of the legislature, judiciary, and the executive?
Sudhir, let me get you in for a final quick take on what you would like to add to the agenda, if anything.
Well, apart from the urban mess, but linked to the urban mess, I think government now needs to remember that they came on the promise of minimum governance and maximum governance. So I think that gap between promise and performance needs to be bridged. There are a slew of urban reforms which are still pending. They've been pending for decades. We've got real estate bills. We've got town planning issues. We haven't really got to grips to any of those reforms. And unless those reforms, coupled with the fact that we need to fix the countryside, the rural economy, we're not going to be able to solve any of these.
Let's club, if we can, getting reforms on the track, ending the parliament logjam, getting governance and government going together, those sort of issues that I think most of you have alluded to in one form or the other. So actually your take on that, because he's right, the central government was sworn in on the principle, on the premise that governance is what is the most important thing. And The agenda, if not the agenda, certainly the headlines have been distracted by something completely different, at least in the last few months.
It was quite correct that when our government came, we were very much of the opinion that minimum government, maximum governance. That's why for the first time in the history after independence, you have seen that the government is going to take up the certain issues which is of social cause, like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. This was not a political issue. This was just an initiative to change the mindset. Second thing, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So these type of social cause initiatives, which were the part of Indian politics pre-independence era, has been brought in. This was just our effort to change the mindset. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi was also saying,
you should say that you've been watching a lot of these NDTV campaigns also, and therefore,
definitely
give it your full support.
So as PM Modi was also saying, that we have to change the entire mindset, as he was saying, whether it is the attitude towards women or attitude of the tolerance or attitude of tolerance in the political system. What happens if some reforms are proposed? Before a consensus is reached, a third, fourth party emerges, and instead of creating coherence, they start creating a conflict out of that.
Is there any possibility in the coming year? So let's, changing mindsets and all is like decades-long projects. This year, do you see reforms being accelerated, government being improved, and specifically, which is some place where you have a major role to play, the logjam in Parliament coming to an end?
With its decisive mandate and with an attitude towards consensus building, the BJP government can really achieve its original goal of minimum government, maximum governance. And it should not try to divert the attention of the public and should not blame others. If it has to evolve a sense of accountability.
2016, are you going to try and reach out more to the opposition to say, help us get this agenda through?
Though it is not the appropriate time to have a heated political debate, but I would just like to remind one thing. The first conflict started on the land acquisition bill, on which on 27th of June 2014, just after 1 month of taking over, we have called the meeting of all the chief ministers, on which the revenue ministers and chief ministers, the opinion which we have given, we proceeded along with that after 6 months, but the conflict was created. So everybody can, and the things are on record. Anybody can take from RTI what was the proceeding and opinion of the various states from Kerala, Karnataka to Uttar Pradesh on land reforms and what were their subsequent stand.
Again, I would just like to remind the BJP that you have the majority in the parliament. You are the big brother of parliament. You are the biggest party. Do not find fault with a party which has originally had 44 and now 45. Surely a 45-member party cannot hold a 280-member party in Lok Sabha to ransom if you actually want to build consensus and not rule by a sense of force.
You've been doing a reasonably good job of it.
Well, because they allow us. Because they're not
seen in the past, even 5 or 10 MPs can hold the whole of parliament to ransom.
If you look at the first year of parliament, it was a very productive session of parliament. It was one of the most productive years of parliament in the history.
Though we are having overwhelming majority in the Lok Sabha, but for the first time in the history of India, a party is having more MPs in Rajya Sabha than in Lok Sabha. From there, they are flexing the muscles and are trying to arm twist the government.
Don't try to be the victim. You've got such a majority. Don't try to play in the victim card.
We are saying,
can the non-politicians
we are the victims, we are the victims.
Okay. Do you see any
politicians come in now?
Do you see any hope for reforms proceeding?
The principle of adversarial competitiveness, even keen adversarial competitiveness, is the lifeblood of democracy. So the issue is not that. The issue is that any healthy democracy draws a distinction between adversaries and enemies. Adversaries can even be respected and enemies are to be killed. If this distinction is dropped, you will have, instead of adversarial competition, you will have shrill brittleness and katuta all around. And I think this distinction we have lost. Indian polity has lost, at least this year, though there are earlier years also when it was lost.
Okay, so let me get both Harsh and Shekhar in on this point. So what he, in a sense, seems to be saying is that he's not sounding entirely optimistic as to the logjam ending and reforms and the rest of it. He seems to be saying, if you're having people treating each other as enemies, then you should not really hope for too much progress, if I'm paraphrasing you correctly.
No, indeed.
I would say that there is a genuine ideological battle playing out on many issues. And those battles should be battled by debate and discussion. I mean, whether markets are going to solve people's problems or you need an interventionist, public sector in health and education and so on. Whether we're doing enough for the agricultural sector, whether we're creating jobs with the kind of growth pattern that we're going, and much more about minorities.
Which also ties into the question of what actually is reform, because what some people consider reform is what others may feel is not reform.
But I'm saying that these are debates in India and in the rest of the world, and we're not debating them. We're just sort of in a kind of a logjam where real issues are getting lost.
Shekhar, your sense of, will Parliament logjams and reforms and government and all of these things proceed in 2016? Or given the amount of hostility that we are now seeing, is it almost futile to expect that? So in a sense, we're linking up two of our agenda items. Reduce the negativity, reduce the intolerance, and you might start seeing, progress in other areas.
Look, you don't see a moral authority or voice in our politics that can end the blood feud that's going on. Right? For more than 10 years, the Congress party tried to put today's Prime Minister and BJP party president in jail. They failed. And it does look like the system now, the powers that be, are trying to get even. So will this last another 10 years of trying to get Sonia and Rahul in jail, or maybe a couple of other Congress chief ministers also? One Congress chief minister gets a tax raid on him on the day of his daughter's wedding. But our memories are short. We have to remember that one senior BJP leader was also arrested on the day of his daughter's wedding and taken to lockup. So these are blood feuds. You did this, we are doing this. You block Parliament, we are blocking Parliament. So this just goes on and on. So you wonder today, does even the President have the moral authority to say, listen, you close this now. Let's come back to conventional politics. Let's stop this politics of take no prisoners or the feudal outlook, winner takes all. You can choose your expression.
Before I come to you, let me ask both of you.
But I shall tell you this, is enemy thing Mr. Advani had once said in a walk the talk. He said, look, Congress party's problem is they treat BJP as an enemy. But the fact is, does the BJP treat the Congress party and specifically the Gandhi family as anything less than an enemy? Answer is no. So when both
when you throw in other things like the Aam Aadmi Party, which also has a very adversarial attitude, it's like
Aam Aadmi Party is what it claims to be. It's anarchist, right? And anarchy is their ideology in politics, and it's working. So don't fight them.
Is there going to be a lessening of what he's, I think, slightly correctly calling a blood feud that seems to be happening?
Actually, whatever he's saying, I partially agree to him. The actual reason is, we are the only political party in the history which gradually grew from an insignificant party to relevant party to main opposition party to the governing party. But the Congress, which has got power from inheritance, had not yet accommodated themselves in the mindset of being in opposition. So we have faced so many adverse circumstances in the last 50-60 years. Even most of the top senior most ministers have been in jail for more than 1.5 years, from emergency to others. And the most significant persecution politically and even media was of Mr. Narendra Modi. So Congress had to adjust in the mindset.
But then the question is, if you have automatically... I'm hearing what you're saying, but I think what Shekhar and Harsh also and Professor Varshni were alluding to is that at the end of the day, the BJP blocked Parliament, so now the Congress is going to block Parliament. The Congress was adversarial and went vendetta after Mr. Modi, now we'll do the reverse.
We were blocking Parliament on the issue, have investigation, have discussion, and subsequently
So
all were...
Everybody has an issue, but blocking Parliament is no solution.
There should be a simple principle, let's not do it.
In fact, now that you're saying so, I'm sort of butting in, but since it's a wish for 2016, what I'd like to hear Mr. Modi or Mr. Amit Shah or someone senior in the BJP to say that, look, it was a mistake for us to have blocked Parliament for this long. We shall not do this again as a party, whether we are ruling or in the opposition. We request others also not to do this.
No,
and let us see how does the Congress
That's a great suggestion.
The wiping of the Parliament started in the month of July 2010 when the entire monsoon session was wiped out on issue of what? 2G. They said no investigation, subsequently court ordered investigation. So whatever we were taking a stand, it was subsequently vindicated. On the issues the Congress started, whatever is vindicated, from Lalit Modi to others to Vyapam, no significant...
I think the point that is being made is, and we're going to ask them as to why they're blocking Parliament, the point I think Shekhar is trying to make is that perhaps we should try and get every political party to come forward and make a unilateral declaration that, look, if those guys are doing something which is wrong, fine. we are now making a categorical statement that it is wrong to block Parliament.
You are an intellectual. So to say that blocking Parliament is a legitimate political tactic are words which should be taken back.
Yeah. Okay. Vikram, I'll just make I'll just make 2 points before I talk about your the question. The first point is it's a very popular frame that nothing has been done in 60 years because there are young people here. You know, and we just had Google CEO.
No, I'm not saying that nothing has been done in 60
mentioned
years.
that Congress ruled for 60 years, so nothing has been done. That's a very popular BJP frame. We just had the Google
Prime
CEO.
Minister on 15th of August has said we owe all
Let's not
so
make
many
it
things.
It's an NDTV debate. Let's not go,
Prime Minister on 15th of August on Red Fort had said.
It's an NDTV debate.
We accept all their
Let's follow NDTV standards.
You're occasionally allowed to interrupt each other on NDTV also.
Okay.
But only just don't hit him.
So we just had the Google CEO in India. Where is he from? IIT. What? You know, IIT was created by whom? First Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So many things have happened in 60 years, whose impact we feel right now. Second, we talk about disruptions. The 15th Lok Sabha, the one before this, was disrupted had 67% working time. If you look at the 13th or 14th Lok Sabha, it worked 97% of its time. The 15th Lok Sabha, starting from, not from, the year that Sudhanshuji is saying, from 2009 onwards. Vikram, I'll just come to your point. Which is the public. In the end, we'll have to listen to the public. And the public right now doesn't want to see the ruling party with its majority fighting all the time with its single largest opposition party. The young people don't want it. The farmers don't want it. The female households don't want it. So eventually, if we just put our ears to the public, we will have to find a way out of this bitterness that we are currently.
Let's hope you're right. Can I come to the two of you?
Yeah. So
reform, and what is the reform that is possible given the hostility?
Yeah, very quickly about what's been happening last 10 minutes here. As if you see, there's no sense of regret by our political parties in what they've been doing or the way they've been conducting. They in fact take pride in this. And they need to understand that at the end of the day, everyone is watching. As citizens, we see that you not performing, you will wake up again in 2019, 2016, 2020 and come to us and tell us to vote for you. These are almost, our government has becoming a non-performing asset or a liability for the citizens in many, many ways. You look at the way every political party, we say that we are the first ones to be doing this. Be it Swachh Bharat, be it Nirmal Bharat, be it Beti Bachao. At the end of the day, if Swachh Bharat was working well in last 12 months, we wouldn't have the Delhi public air crisis that we had, the air quality crisis that we had.
It takes time to clean up. I think let's be fair. It takes time. These things are not going to happen overnight.
So I'm not blaming this particular government only. I'm saying governments after governments have perhaps not given due importance to public issues.
The only problem, Sudhanshu, is once you start getting into justifications,
exactly,
you'll always come up with a justification. In this case, they'll say you're trying to arrest our leaders. So
even after coming in the power, on the issue of tolerance, we were saying have discussion in Parliament. On the issue of conversion, we said have discussion in the Parliament. You were avoiding discussion when you were in power and avoiding discussion when you are opposition. This is the problem.
No, who is paying the price for all of this?
No, it's not the question
country
of
is. Parliament
realize is there for discussion. If you are not ready for discussion,
can we take a few steps back and look at the end of the day, who is paying the price for this behavior, and you take pride in this.
Obviously,
is the country
so those
suffering?
Who are responsible should realize.
Whosoever is responsible.
Great democracies of the world, you look at the top 10 democracies. Is Parliament blocked in any democracy? I think blocking of Parliament by anybody is a punishment on the citizen of the country.
Absolutely.
Right? Every 5 years, more and more Indians come out to vote because they have faith in Parliament, state assemblies, and what Parliament does then sets the trend for state assemblies.